Hello. So in the last video I was looking at this navigation prototype, and I was trying to extend this to start looking at field of view and line of sight, and that turns out to be that was a mistake. This is really just a prototype for navigation. It's just a bunch of nav trails laid down, and the actual game or prototype doesn't have any concept of what rooms are or corridors. These kind of rectangles are just visual things, so a human eye can actually make out that maybe this is an elevator shaft, these are corridors, this is a door, but the actual game itself doesn't have any concept of that. So I started to look at how a level is going to be actually represented in the game, how they're going to be built up. I started looking at a tile-based approach, so having a massive grid covering the entire level, and rooms are basically just different configurations of tiles, like floor tile, wall tile. But the problem with a tile grid is it's a bit restrictive. Some things are simpler, but other things are made much more complicated. For example, I want to be able to have diagonal surfaces. So I've decided instead to allow more sort of arbitrary shapes and go with rooms being the basic elements of a level. So a level is just built up of lots of rooms. In order to do this, I started working on a level editor, really for dev testing at this stage. I want to be able to quickly throw together a few rooms and maybe a few sort of features in them in order to then run it in the game and see how it plays. So this works by just placing rooms and linking them together. So kind of very basic, but even if I was going to have procedurally generated levels, the algorithm would work in a similar way. It would just be stitching together rooms in some sort of interesting way. The benefit of handcrafted stuff of levels rather than there's two benefits I think of handcrafted levels rather than procedurally generated stuff. One is that humans are better at designing stuff, so an algorithm will tend to produce stuff that's a bit more boring, whereas a human can kind of make stuff a little bit more interesting. The other thing is that all your players, if you've got handcrafted levels, will be playing the same levels. So there's a bit of a shared experience. For example, take Half-Life 1 or Half-Life 2. Everybody played through, in Half-Life 1, everyone played through like Delta Labs and stuff. So you can relate to other people. You say, oh, what did you do in this situation? What did you do here and stuff? If all the levels are procedurally generated, everyone's got a different experience. So there's pros and cons to it, of course. I mean, procedural generation in this kind of game is going to be a bit sort of like XCOM kind of game. Is useful so that each level is slightly different, so you don't know what's around the next corner, sort of thing. So you'll see how it goes. But for dev testing, this level editor will be useful anyway. The way this works is that I've got a separate project for. I'll go through the workflow because it's definitely very slapdash, and maybe somebody finds it kind of useful to go, oh, okay, it can be done like that, because it doesn't. You can sort of question and say, should it be being done like that? So what I've got this room editor that allows an actual room to be defined, and I'm just co-opting the Unity scene editor for this, because the scene editor's got everything really. It's got grids, it's got all sorts of things. I could probably make a level editor with it, but my knowledge of Unity, the actual Unity editor stuff isn't that great, and I wanted to be able to link rooms together in the level editor, so I've gone with a separate project. But for this, it's basically have a sprite here that basically has the room outline, just the visuals of the room, and I want eventually to switch this to being 3D rooms, so this will be a 3D model rather than a sprite, and then define surfaces, the navigation surfaces. They probably also might even be used for hit detection and stuff. I'm not sure yet how that's going to work. I might use, if I'm using 3D models, it might be like just a mesh collider. I don't know yet. But anyway, it has to all be arranged in a certain hierarchy, and then there's I've added an export button here, and when you hit that, it basically saves all the room metadata to JSON, saves it to disk. That again, then I manually load that into the level editor project into different room folders under resources, and then that basically allows the room to be available to be put into the editor. So that's the basic workflow for creating the levels, although I still at the moment don't have a button that actually saves the level to disk. and I also don't have a game yet that is able to load the levels. So those are the two next things I'm planning to do. This prototype, all the nav code will be shifted into the game, but other than that, this will probably yeah, I probably won't be using this going forwards, because now that I've got the ability to sort of string rooms together, I can test navigation in the actual editor, and then now I can start looking at FOV and other stuff, lighting and sort of stuff as well, and see how that goes. One simple thing. So there's two immediate ideas that spring to mind from having this room system. For like AI. AI is really kind of boosted by having as much information available as possible. So if the game's got a concept of rooms in which rooms are connected, you could do things like pathfinding, because at the moment I'm doing it based on these nav links. So if you had something moving over the ceiling, it could actually follow the ceiling. But you could have navigation working by room. So you could say, yeah, I want to get over here from here. Which room am I starting in? Which room am I ending in? And if you don't get any obstacles other than between rooms, like doors, then you can just do your pathfinding over the rooms. The other benefit, I think, there's some possibilities with fields of view that kind of work with a room. There's a cheap option of doing visibility as well, is to say that units can see enemies that are in the same room they're in, or adjacent rooms, but they can't see further than that. And that might work if rooms are approximately the same size. That's one option anyway. It might just work, and that's kind of a simple thing. It'd be quite nice if that just works. I doubt it though. So that's pretty much it. So thank you for watching.